Welcome to Bitcoin Basics with your hosts Faris and Gordon. Visit bitcoinbasics.help if you need help buying and securing your Bitcoin.
Hello and welcome to another Bitcoin Basics podcast with your guests Faris and Gordon. That's me. But before we get going today, and it has been a while, you can notice I'm rusty already, let's check our proof recording. So for January the 16th, 2025, i.e. today, the price of Bitcoin, Faris, is 100,320. Okay, I'm going. See you later. That's it. We've reached 100K. We're done. No, we're not, because we're not going to talk about price at all. The current block height is 879,431. Faris, it's been a while, as you can see from that intro, which was horrible. We thought that we'd do a bit of a introspective, navel-gazing podcast. But before we get into that, how are you? What have you been doing? And are we still alive? Because we've had a few emails.
Gordon, listeners, thank you for tuning in. It has been a long time. We do apologize. We've been away. Gordon and I both had like some changes in the last 12 to 18 months. And I moved country, relocated. So just a lot going on. So we took a bit of a hiatus. I actually have been inactive in Bitcoin for quite some time. I haven't looked at a chart in a very long time and just took a bit of a breather. I think we'll talk about that more in detail, but yeah, we are back. And thank you for the people that did reach out to us saying, hey, where are you guys? What's going on?
If you enjoyed this podcast, please subscribe, like, and share so we can find others like yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. It's good to see that we've got some listeners out there looking out for us. But we thought we'd do a bit of a reflective sort of episode today, just to, it's been, well, I've actually got a question for you, Faris. When was our first episode?
2017, wasn't it?
I think that's when, yeah.
No, sorry. 2017 is when we started the business. 2019 was our first podcast.
Well done. So I've got a couple of questions for you, and don't be embarrassed because I would probably fail these answers as well. Yes, October 2019, at least that's when we published our first podcast. We've been talking about Bitcoin way before that. But so it's been an amazing journey. We've had an amazing amount of guests and opportunity to interview some incredibly interesting people. And I don't know about you, I've been humbled to interview those people. But in terms of perspectives, well, actually, before I go into that, second question, I promise I've only got 3 questions. Who was our first guest?
Our very first guest. Oh, man, I should know this one.
He's famous. He's too big for us now.
That describes a lot of them.
He's rebranded his podcast. That will give you a hint.
It wasn't Peter McCormack, was it?
It was.
Was
yes.
Our first guest?
Very first guest. Yeah. Oh. And last question, and I had to look this up. How many guests have we had?
I'd guess around 50. No, more. We've had more.
Well, I'm not counting guests twice, obviously. And if there were 2 guests on the podcast, that's 2. Yeah, 44. So that's a pretty good guess. So, yeah, before I forget, congratulations to you on our 200th episode that we had a few episodes back. It's been a great journey. And, thank you for sharing this little adventure experiment with me. And also thank you to all our guests as well. We've had everyone from, sort of technical Bitcoin developers to massive Wall Street investors and everyone in between. So thank you to them as well.
Yeah, it's quite funny. I went to a market yesterday and just got myself a cold brew coffee and started talking to a guy, and Bitcoin, of course, came up, and he was like, how did you get a prince from Tonga on your show? I'm like, oh, we actually probably had a segment devoted just to royalty, and Prince Filip Grigorovich from Serbia, and I mentioned Mark Yusko. And he's like, how did you get these guys? I said, well, people were in lockdown, so you just spam their Twitter DMs. So we've been incredibly fortunate for the quality of people who come on our show because we're no one, we're yeah, like guys like Mark Yusko, incredibly generous with his time. Like, and here's a guy who manages $5-6 billion. He responds to people on Twitter. Like that was quite humbling, as you say.
Yeah, Raul Pal as well. So we've had some big heavy hitters, and also we've had people who are just doing their own thing. They're doing their own Bitcoin project, and they're kind of doing that. So we've had amazing variety from technical, non-technical, big. I wouldn't say celebrities. I don't know, but yeah. So amazing.
Bitcoin
So
world,
thanks, I guess.
Celebrities.
Celebrities in the Bitcoin. Well, Jimmy Song, he's kind of a celebrity in the Bitcoin sphere, I guess. So let's keep this short and sweet because we may have lost our listeners already doing navel gazing on how good we've been so far. But that wasn't really the point of this episode. The point of this episode is maybe have a look back in terms of what has changed in our opinions and perspectives, and perhaps what hasn't changed. So how about you go first? Well, let's look at what's changed. Like in terms, and it can be anything. That's an open-ended question. For you, however long you've been in Bitcoin, what's different now?
Yeah, so for the last year, I've taken a step back. So I'm that personality type where I have to learn things comprehensively, obsessively even. So when I first started learning about Bitcoin, 2016, I was spending about 4 hours a day just listening to podcasts, reading materials. And it wasn't probably 3 or 6 months later till I actually decided to buy some. And I I was terrified at times. They're going through the blockchain wars. And I remember guys saying this is going to break Bitcoin when they fork. It's going to be the end of Bitcoin. So I was terrified of investing in Bitcoin at that stage because I overdid it with my research. So we've been, so I've been heavily involved in the Bitcoin space as an educator, doing all the stuff I've been doing with Gordon for 7 years. And it was just time for me to take a step back because it was all things Bitcoin and, other than, personal life, not much else professionally, really. So after 7 years is a good time to kind of take a breather. And it was good. I stepped back, didn't look at a chart, and just realized, there is more to the world than Bitcoin. As important as it is. For those of you listening, Gordon is shaking his head at me right now. There is more to the world than Bitcoin, but it is still obviously a big part of my identity and what me and Gordon do. So yeah, it's kind of been good. It's been good for many reasons, which I'll elaborate a bit later. But yeah, I've taken a step back and it has been good for me.
You're right. There is a lot more to the world than Bitcoin. There's also Linux as well. So I'd like to add that. Okay, well, let's get specific though. What, in terms of your opinions about something, whether, product, service, or fundamental sort of concept, what have you changed your mind on?
I haven't changed my mind, but it's kind of been insightful in that. So, me and Gordon running a podcast, all the people that we were working with, helping people get off of exchanges, running meetups. It was Bitcoin, 7 days a week. And then you feel like Bitcoin is part of the zeitgeist. It's everywhere. And then when you step back, you realize how few people are actually investing in Bitcoin, for one. And it's not part of popular culture. It's definitely not part of the daily economic or financial news cycle. Not at all. So taking a step back was like, oh, wow, we're still very early. And now that we've crossed 100K, it's going to be in the news cycle again. I mean, there's a lot going on in the news already for the first 2 weeks of January. But yeah, it's going to start rolling out in the news again. Yeah, I think I've mentioned this before. My background is international relations and development. And for me, our one of my favorite episodes is still when we interviewed Bitcoin Exashi out of South Africa, who is basically working to get kids off the street, running a surf program, and they pay their surfing instructors in Bitcoin. They're developing a little economy in this village in South Africa around Bitcoin. I often think of that because, yeah, that's to me, coming from the development international relations background, that is the potential for Bitcoin there. So yeah, it's been good to kind of step back and just, not saturate myself with Bitcoin and just, filter out, what's of value. And one thing I've realized is, this is the advice we give all our listeners, but of course we don't take it ourselves, is don't look at buy Bitcoin as a long-term investment. Don't look at the price for 5 years. I wish I'd taken my own advice. Too many sleepless nights I've spent, stressing about the price of Bitcoin, trading it, charts, all the stuff we told people I didn't do myself. So taking a step back has been very good. Say, okay, the advice I was giving was great. Why didn't I freaking do it?
Yeah, I'd like to ditto those comments as well, because it can be overwhelming. You listen to, all the podcasts and consume yourself down the rabbit hole, and it is 24/7. So yeah, I think we both sort of took a step back sort of recently, I guess, in the last year, maybe even year and a half, to sort of reset and sort of, okay, there are other things important in life. Not sure what they are, but there are. And yeah, because it can be overwhelming. Price is never something I mean, of course, everyone concentrates on the price, but yeah, the whole trading thing I mean, I guess I had a short stint in trading and all that kind of stuff, but yeah, I don't think I've changed in terms of hodling and sort of accumulating Bitcoin. As you said, I wish I followed my advice and bought more Bitcoin at the time and hodled and not spend and that kind of stuff. But yeah, and that's just part of the journey. Products and services have changed, obviously, exchanges, wallets, whatever, that changes sort of all the time. But for me, actually, and you mentioned Bitcoin Akasi in South Africa. Yeah, for me, what's changed is really going from Bitcoin, the theory, into Bitcoin, the reality. And especially with stuff like Lightning Network, I think that's actually blown my mind, in that I thought it was just sort of, yeah, okay, it's a few people LARPing around and people, so what, a little community getting paid in Bitcoin and using Lightning. Oh, that's so cute and that's so sweet. But actually, yeah, I think that has changed, in my opinion, of how important Lightning and these layer 2 networks are. And I've been down a rabbit hole of Nostr, which is for another episode. But yeah, I've just realized how Bitcoin could actually be used for non-monetary applications, like identity and social media and that kind of stuff as well. I knew that in theory, but to actually use it, set up your own Lightning network and set up your own Nostr account, yeah, I've seen the reality of that. So yeah, I'm super bullish and excited to see what comes of that. And there's also several projects around that. And we've interviewed Jimmy Song, we've interviewed Alex. He's setting up his Nostr based travel service as well. So yeah, all that stuff to me, because let's be honest, the basic Bitcoin protocol hasn't really changed. You got blocks every 10 minutes and it does its thing, right? Not very exciting. I'm sure developers get exciting about all the new implementations and Bitcoin improvement proposal, but for me, that's not really exciting. What is exciting is all these applications on top and around Bitcoin. So that's probably, for me, the thing that's changed in terms of my opinion of going from, it's kind of an experiment, it's kind of fun, to something actually reality and people can actually use it. And the second thing is, I think I've changed my mind on Bitcoin mining. I think I've done a 360 full circle. When I first sort of started Bitcoin and altcoins and whatnot, I was mining and that was fun and that was a great way to get Bitcoin, but then that became too expensive. And then I sort of just thought, yeah, mining's just too difficult. It's too involved. Just buy Bitcoin from an exchange. But now I'm kind of like, well, with all the privacy regulations, it's harder to buy coins privately. Bitcoin, mining Bitcoin is the best way to buy Bitcoin. You get virgin coins, maybe at a premium, but yeah, there's no transactional history to that. So yeah, I think that would be the other major thing that I've changed sort of my opinion on in that the importance of Bitcoin mining.
Yeah, I think with mining, I would like us to devote, actually, our next episode, I think, should be about mining. We've interviewed people that run mining companies from Argentina to, where was it, Uruguay to Saudi Arabia, I think. So, and I've had experiences with miners trying to set one up myself, buying one through a company where it's located somewhere in the other side of the world. So I'm not sure about that. I'm not convinced what the best way to mine is yet. But yeah, that we will have our next episode is if you want to get into mining, how do you do it? What's the best way to do it? So I think we'll devote our next episode to that one.
Cool. All right. Well, what are the things that haven't changed? Obviously, Bitcoin fundamentals, that kind of stuff. But what are you still strong on?
So you originally told me about crypto and Bitcoin 2013, I think it was, and you were excited from the technological aspect of it. And that was over my head. Like, I was like, okay, great. And it's kind of like, it makes me think of that time when Bill Gates was being interviewed by David Letterman in the early 90s. And David Letterman goes, what's this internet thing? Do we really need it? And people are like, we don't need this internet thing. Like, there's, talk shows in America going, this internet thing, oh, I can't be bothered with it. It just looked like another hassle distraction. No one knew how ubiquitous the internet would be today back then. Maybe some people guess, but so as far as the fundamentals of Bitcoin, nothing's changed for me. With the government responses to COVID and especially the financial crisis, which I wrote about, it is making Bitcoin even more valuable. So we've had the everything bubble, which hasn't burst yet. Where we just had, because we printed so much money since 2008 all the way through to the mid 2010s, and it's still going. We're just printing so much money that has eroded the value of cash or currency. It's eroded the value of currency that people have bought assets. So and someone can fact check me on this one, but I saw a tweet where there was two headlines. One was the middle class lost $1.4 trillion during COVID, and the billionaires gained $1.4 trillion during COVID. And they described it as simply a transfer of wealth. And the sign of a healthiest society is a burgeoning middle class. As soon as you have the erosion of a middle class, it does not end well. It ends in revolution. This goes back to, the French Revolution. Even before then, like the Roman Empire, you need a healthy middle class. If you don't have that, then the disparity between the rich and the poor, that creates huge social discord that leads to revolution. This isn't anything new. So Bitcoin to me is a great financial equalizer because the people making these financial decisions that affect inflation, affect how you put food on your table, how you pay for your bills, they're unaffected by these decisions. And this is described as moral hazard. Bitcoin removes all that. And it's unfortunate that, and someone else wrote this, I wish I could remember who it was. I think it was Seyfedin Ammous. He said, Bitcoin is generational wealth. This camouflage is a Ponzi scheme. It was something along those lines. I wish I could remember that quote verbatim, but it is largely misunderstood. And that's our job here. We just want to make this understood.
Seyfedin is actually one of the guests I'd love to have on the podcast, but we haven't yet. We're trying. Yeah, I agree with all that, Faris, and I'm not going to reiterate that completely. My fundamentals haven't changed at all. I've never sort of been a Bitcoin is going to take over the world and fix everything sort of person, even if Bitcoin adoption is 5%. Of sort of, monetary transactions or whatever. I think that's, even if it's 1%, it's sort of a huge win. It's just an alternative and not everyone's going to adopt it. But for the people who are probably listening to this podcast, put some of your wealth and pension fund or whatever that is into it. No financial advice, whether it's 1%, 5, 10, 50, whatever. Just get some into Bitcoin. And while I was looking through those past episodes, it's interesting, like all the topics that we covered, the questions, and by the way, we've had some really great questions, I think about 40 or 45 questions so far. So keep them coming. bitcoinbasics.help/ask. We've answered every single question. And the topics we've had, they've all been the same, even some of the headlines today about quantum computers taking over and AI and government involvement, 51% attacks and all that kind of stuff.
Mm.
The episodes that we produced 5 years ago are still relevant today because those questions are just being recycled in the media every couple of years. Threats to Bitcoin and why Bitcoin's going to fail and how many times has Bitcoin died now. And so, yeah, I'm glad we kept those sort of evergreen topics and evergreen episodes because they're still relevant today. Someone getting into Bitcoin right now, and if you're listening to this for the first time, you can go back to episode 3 and have a look when we went through the white paper and discussed, the Bitcoin white paper. It's a little bit dry, it's a little bit verbose, but the fundamentals are the same, exactly the same.
Yeah.
So for me, that hasn't changed.
I agree. And if you're coming to Bitcoin now, it's so much easier. Well, I wouldn't say it's so much easier to buy. There are easier vehicles there, depending on your jurisdiction. Like in Australia, they clamped down on that last year to try to prevent exchanges from. I know they did prevent exchanges from onboarding. But I remember, like, I heard stories. Like, and these are people that I know. One was they went into the bank, like when Bitstamp's bank was in Latvia or somewhere in Eastern Europe was their bank. So you actually had to do a physical wire transfer from your branch to this bank in Latvia. And I had one person wanted to buy Bitcoin. I was at 3,000 and the bank teller talked them out of it. Said, this looks dodgy. And the person said, okay. I had another guy recently tell me he had to do the same thing. He had to send money to do a transfer to Coinbase in America. And the bank teller at the bank says, what's this for? He says, I want to buy Bitcoin. And the teller asked the bank manager, do we have any Bitcoins lying around?
Excellent.
So things have changed, but the fundamentals are, and like you say, we're going to get the same questions. How do I keep my Bitcoin safe? And my opinion has changed on that a lot as far as what is the best way to keep your Bitcoin safe? And we've always advocated removing your private keys from exchanges. That hasn't changed. Get your private keys off exchanges. Don't leave them there. Do them right now. Because if they don't get hacked or stolen, it looks like the government's going to prevent you from removing them. What do you do from them then? That's the ultimate question. How do you maintain, store your private keys? So, yeah.
Well, buying Bitcoin has never been easier, but buying Bitcoin privately has never been harder. So that's been an obvious change.
Yeah.
Self-custody for me hasn't changed. It's like get your Bitcoins on an exchange. Yeah, the products and services and what hardware wallet and blah, blah, we maybe have slightly changed in terms of recommendations, but at the end of the day, just get your Bitcoins off the exchange. That definitely hasn't changed. And that's been our catch cry of this podcast since day one. Self-custody, if your coins are on exchange, you don't own them. You're only renting them. So
and one thing I'm very proud of and continue to be proud of is we've been Bitcoin only since day one. And like I was at an office works yesterday and I had to kill some time. I was waiting for something to be processed and they had all the computers up and this one guy had TradingView up. And I thought he was looking at a chart of Pepsi because it was PEPI but it was PEPI versus Tether. And it's obviously some altcoin. And he just saw this guy like shoulders just drop and sigh and walk away. And it's like, oh man, I'm sorry, but yeah, anything get rich quick is always too good to, it just doesn't happen. Stay away from the alt, stay away from Ethereum. We've been wrong about Ethereum for 7 years, but eventually we will be right.
How have we been wrong?
Well, the price has gone up in Ethereum, hasn't it? I mean, I haven't looked at a chart of Ethereum for probably 2 years, but presume that, like, I told people when Ethereum was at 400, I said, stay away, don't buy it. I think it went up to $4,000, but I mean, Bitcoin still went up the same, but eventually, yeah, we'll be proven right about Ethereum.
Well, everything pumps and dumps. It goes up, it goes down. Just some coins take longer to do it. But anyway, let's not get sidetracked with Ethereum versus Bitcoin. Yeah. But no, you're right. It's good that we've been Bitcoin. And again, with Lightning, a lot of these altcoins simply exist because, Bitcoin's slow, it's expensive, and da-da-da. blah, 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 altcoin does 100,000 transactions a second, and blah, 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 altcoin has low fees, and blah, 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 altcoin can do smart contracts. And so, again, building on top of Bitcoin, these layer 2 networks, not Lightning and other like Liquid and other stuff, they kind of solve the problem of Bitcoin's slowness and expensiveness by design. So anyway, that's a topic for another day. But I think back in the day, it was probably one of the early episodes. That's basically what we said. We said, yeah, look, there's Bitcoin, the base layer, but there's going to be a lot of stuff that's built on top of Bitcoin that's going to solve the need for all these other altcoins. And so I think that's slowly happening now. But anyway, look, people are going to buy whatever. They're going to buy Pepe coin that, pumps to 300x, and then tomorrow it dumps. And there's actually a site, I was listening to a podcast. There's a site where you can generate your own coin, your own meme coin, NFT or whatever. And some of these pump and dumps happen within 5 minutes. So the coin gets created, it pumps, 300x, and then 5 minutes later it's dead. So the lifetime of that coin is 5 minutes. So yeah, we're living in incredible times. I have a short attention span, but my attention span is not that short.
So one thing I've noticed is, and I will give Bitcoin and blockchain credit for this, is how legacy banking has actually improved. Because it used to be 3 days to transfer funds from one account to another. They charge you who knows what. But these days, within the same jurisdiction, within the same country, you can just give someone your mobile phone number, they can send you money now. And I think it's because of Bitcoin that has now happened.
Absolutely. And the ultimate, and this is where I sort of disagree with other Bitcoiners and Bitcoin maximalists. The ultimate sort of test of Bitcoin was, what can you buy coffee with it? And it's like, well, number one, now you can, because there are certain debit cards and credit cards that are linked to your Bitcoin and Lightning and apps and all that kind of stuff. But number two, why would you want to? Like, why would you want to walk into a cafe and spend your superannuation, or for America, your 401k, your pension fund or whatever? That doesn't make any sense. Or walk into a cafe and spend your Starbucks stock at a Starbucks cafe. Like, it doesn't make any sense to do that anyway. But, whatever. People can do whatever they want. But you're right. I think Bitcoin has definitely affected banking, but it's affected so many other areas as well. And this whole blockchain revolution and AI and quantum computing and all this will be rehashed and recycled. I now see sort of quantum computing sort of coming back into the conversation, and now there's going to be no more quantum resistant coins, and Bitcoin's going to get hacked because quantum computers are going to hack Bitcoin addresses, and Bitcoin's going to die, and blah, blah, blah. So we've heard all this before. Bitcoin's up to about the 2,000th or 3,000th death so far, probably more. But we'll end there because we're getting off track. Thanks again, Faris, for sharing this journey with me. It's been amazing. We've taken some time off recently to sort of reset and take a step back. But I'm ready for the next cycle, the post 100K, whatever that cycle looks like, not just price, but innovation and layer 2 networks and whatnot. And I'm also interested in interviewing some guests, maybe outside of the Bitcoin ecosystem as well, sort of some financial people, dare I say it, celebrities who maybe heard of Bitcoin, but they don't sort of know what it is. But yeah, we'll continue to be Bitcoin only. We'll continue to be pragmatic. We won't give any financial advice, but we'll just try our very best to provide some education in terms of best practices, operational security and information security. And at the end of the day, we want you to keep your Bitcoin safe. So get them off the exchange into cold storage, however or whatever that looks like. And a quick plug, a shameless plug, if you do have a significant amount of Bitcoin, contact us, bitcoinbasics.help. There's a form there where people are now sort of discovering that, my 0.1 or my 0.5 Bitcoin that I had when it was back at 1,000 or whatever is actually now a significant amount. I need to get it off the exchange, or I have, $100,000 on my mobile phone Bitcoin app. Well, that's probably not a good thing. So yeah, contact us and we can go through self-custody. That's kind of what we do, whether that's estate planning or setting up a cold storage solution or multi-sig or whatever that is. So yeah, if you're listening to this and want some advice, bitcoinbasics.help.
Thanks for watching or listening. If you enjoyed this podcast, please like, subscribe, and share so we can spread this educational content to others like yourself. Visit bitcoinbasics.help.
Disclaimer. Any content provided by CoinCompass is for educational and informational purposes only and is not investment, legal, tax, or any other professional advice. A qualified professional should be consulted before making any financial decisions. CoinCompass will at times recommend certain products, services, and technologies, but these are opinions based upon our own or podcast guests' experience and not endorsements. We take no liability for out-of-date or inaccurate information, software bugs, manufacturing errors, technology misuse, or issues involving third parties. Visit coincompass.com for more information and please contact us.